on this episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists.
If you see an instrumentation class available at a conference or your local component, or as you're exploring what it's available to you, I would take it. Because even if you've been practicing for 10, 20, 30 years and you're very seasoned in your clinical skill, maybe it's time to just try something different. Our problem is, as clinicians, is that we don't often do the due diligence needed to see what else is out there. We learned on specific cassette of instruments when we were a student. This was our prophy kit, or this was our perio kit, or maybe we just had one big kit and we just picked up whatever we thought was going to work.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists, episode number 454. My name is Andrew.
And I'm Annie.
What's up, Annie?
Hey, it's going.
Good, good.
Yeah, it's good. How are you?
I'm really good. I have so many things to talk about.
Yeah.
And we have not a lot of time. So one quick thing. I'm trying to grow out some facial hair.
I know, I see that. It's like an early No Shave November.
I know, little whiskers for... See, the thing is, I need to get like a several month jump start on that. Yes. Where everyone else, like, I'm going to start on the 1st. And like, I will start on the 1st also, but in September, I can actually get some...
Yes,
I don't
awesome.
Grow hair. And so I'm going to get a little...
It's pretty substantial, I would say.
Yeah, that's the bad thing. Like, I never post on social media anymore, so... no one actually knows what it is, but let me grow it out a little bit further, and we'll see if we can get for our non-watching audience. Right. These lines right here need to connect on my face, and then
they're getting there. They're filling in.
They're almost there.
Yes.
It's annoying as all get out. I can't believe that people do this normally, and it's itchy and it's gross. But so there's that. I also forgot about this thing that I had promised everyone a long time ago, is that I was going to list all the Taylor Swift albums in order, actually every song that she ever did in order. And I don't remember the last update if I ever gave any, but I got through at least the 2019 album, and I can't remember, is that Redemption or something? I don't know them. These things. And it's been the most torturous thing that I've ever been to her. But the funny thing is I actually recognize several of these songs. I'm like, oh, so she is popular. Like, people do listen to her music and play it on the radio and play it everywhere. So wait, did I say Redemption? There's no such, it's Reputation. That was,
I wouldn't know. I couldn't tell you.
Again, I don't know any of the names of these things. And sorry, Swiftie fans, if you're listening, I'm sure one is going to come after me for not this. Anyways. But I will, by the end of the year, I will endure and push through it. Then the last thing is I just got back from the Philippines to do a scouting trip for, I think we're going to be adding a second Philippines dental trip.
Amazing.
October. I'm not going to give all the updates on this one, but maybe you and I can do like a separate episode, and I can give you the rundown of the trip.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It's a different location. It's completely different type of trip than the island hopping one, but it's in a place called Boracay, Boracay, if anyone ever want to look that up. Gorgeous beaches. When we were there, it was stormy, so it was kind of hard to see it, and I don't have any pictures for anyone at this point, but you can go on Google and find all the pictures. And it was amazing. And we talked to the principal at the school where the kids are, and she was just like, yes, please come see us. And everything was just really, really awesome. The whole trip was awesome. And then we went, which is where the other location is, to kind of shore up some kind of last minute, well, not last minute because it's not till March, but like some other things, details about the trip with our tour company, and also to find like a really good hotel, because that was one of our sticking points last time, is we didn't really have a great hotel. And I think we found the hotel. And so it was a really successful trip.
Great.
It was nice to be in the Philippines again with my buddy Daniel. And so those are the updates for everybody. I'll be hopefully announcing more stuff about this a little bit later.
Nice.
As it comes on. But in today's episode, we have a topic that I think it's one of those ones that doesn't really interest me when I see it, like on the lineups of the programs and stuff at like Under One Roof or whatever. But because it's Whitney Howerton, everyone, if you don't know who she is, you definitely need to get to know who she is. But when she talks about instrumentation, we should have a video podcast for this. She lights up. She loves talking instrumentation.
So cool.
I wanted to ask you, Annie, are you the type of person that you have your go-to setup, like these are your 3 scalers and that's all you're going to use? Or do you have like the 30 scalers and you're just going to...
No, I feel like I'm so specific. Like I feel like I have like pretty minimal, like I always go to my Gracies, like I always have a Montana Jack, the Universal. Like I'm pretty just not stuck in my ways, but I feel like I found what has worked for me. But I mean, I'm open to new instruments, but I've just kind of stuck with what I've had.
Well, and so that's one of the things we talked about in the episode, was not that we're stuck in our ways, but like kind of whatever we learned on is kind of what we think that instruments are, right? And trying to, it's hard once you know how to do your job with the tools that you have, to be like, you know what, let me just try something new and different.
Totally.
Like that's a weird, it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing, right? That's the way we think. But she started rattling off some of these names and I'm like, oh, I don't even know what that is. Like,
totally.
What does that look like?
And just to have the opportunity to try a new instrument can sometimes be, I think, hard for some hygienists just because having access to that. But obviously there are new instruments coming out to make our jobs and lives easier in addressing problem areas as clinicians face. So, but yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Whitney does a great job on this one.
Awesome.
And then, for the next couple of weeks episodes, we have several of them. We have one that's going to be on pregnancy that we're going to be recording here pretty quick. The problem is we haven't recorded a lot of these ones, and so I can't tell you what's coming out next, everyone. But just kind of hang in there with us, and we'll give you some good content. We have several speakers that have already accepted the invitation. We just need to kind of I've been gone, so we just need to kind of get all that stuff put together, and then we'll have a better update for you. Annie, anything else that we need to talk to our friends that are listening out there about?
I don't think so. I think you've covered it all.
Excellent. Well, listeners, enjoy this episode with Whitney.
A tale of 2 hygienists.
All right, listeners, welcome to the interview portion of the podcast. Joined today by Whitney. Whitney, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Well, the thing that listeners don't know, it was a 1:00 call that we had to record this. It's now 1:30 because we've been chatting about all of the other stuff in life. We're so excited about what the future holds. And I learned something about you this time. I've always thought the most amazing things of you, but you are a very diverse individual. You have, so what did you call it? You have your...
Like a Crayola box of options. I think my years of experience between clinical practice and being an educator and working in the manufacturing industry and doing kind of clinical education on a domestic and international scale, I'm surprised at myself at what I've actually experienced as a dental hygienist outside of clinical practice.
And it's funny because everyone's like, oh, hygienists just like scrape teeth. And you're like, okay, go talk to Whitney because she's got some things she wants to say about that.
Oh man, there's so many, just like you, Andrew, too. There are so many clinicians that have broadened their realm of what defines a dental hygienist, right? We've got so many great friends that are key opinion leaders and up and coming key opinion leaders and people in the sales side that we're friends with. There's so much for dental clinicians to do. That's a whole nother multiple episodes.
I mean, let's talk about that and see if we can collaborate on some really cool things about that. So listeners, we're going to talk about instrumentation today, but I think before we get into it, I want to know more because I do think that you're among the foremost experts on this topic, but I want to know more about your journey. Like you were saying, like you have so many things in your background that kind of led you up to where you're at now. So if you can kind of just give us a quick little overview.
Quick overview. I've practiced clinically for 14 years. I still do practice clinically at an office here in Tennessee. I've also been full-time faculty at a local program here, and I've been adjunct faculty at the University of Tennessee for 8 years. So I transitioned from clinical to faculty, and then I was approached by a manufacturing company to just be a clinical rep for them to promote their products and set up exhibit tables and go to shows. And I fell in love with that. I've always loved a good side hustle. I've always believed in having like a good side hustle, just for fun and something different to like break up what you do in life and give you a little extra spending money,
And travel around and see things, right?
That's exactly right. See my dental friends at all these conferences. So I did both of those for a while. And then that opportunity transitioned into a full-time role of building out a new clinical education program for one of the largest dental manufacturers. So I spent several years doing that. And it was just an amazing opportunity. Then I got a phone call from a large healthcare entity that was opening very comprehensive healthcare. So it was primary care, dental, radiology, audiology, behavioral health, and community health. So I transitioned to that company for the last few years. And unfortunately, they decided to dissolve their business and telehealth business. And now I'm leading, once again, a clinical education department for PDT, Paradise Dental Technology Instruments. So back on the manufacturing side, back educating my colleagues, practicing, and up and coming, future colleagues about great products. So that's kind of full circle of Whitney Howerton. I still teach some adjunct when I can and still practice clinically when I can. So I still love a good side hustle. I hadn't changed.
You're just doing everything. So let me ask this, I think, to kind of get us kicked off, because I think when many hygienists, especially the tenured ones, are going through, like, as we'll say that we're at a conference and we're looking at all the different courses we could take, and we see one that says instrumentation, the reaction of a tenured hygienist is like, snooze fest 101. So how are you so dang interested still in this topic when a lot of people, maybe misguidedly, think it's very boring?
That is totally fair, Andrew, because we have our favorites, right? So when you see an instrumentation class, and unless you've just never heard of the company before, or you're just really eager to learn, you're probably going to skip it. You're going to be like, oh, I'd rather learn about something else. Right. But our problem is, as clinicians, is that we don't often do the due diligence needed to see what else is out there. We learned on specific cassette of instruments when we were a student. This was our Profi kit, or this was our Perio kit, or maybe we just had one big kit and we just picked up whatever we thought was going to work. Yeah. Or we had maybe a favorite faculty member that really loved this particular instrument. So all of a sudden it became your favorite too, because if that faculty is grading you, you wanted to have used that instrument so they knew that you used their favorite. And unfortunately, as faculty, we kind of do that sometimes. Like our personal bias goes in onto the students unintentionally because we pick up the same thing. And I think we just carry that into clinical practice as hygienists once we've graduated our programs, and we never explore what else. We work with what we have and we make it work.
Absolutely. I feel like that's kind of, I think that was my first barrier to entry, which is kind of an unfortunate part, because in school I was issued the cassettes that we were going to use. And then in my first practice to use something completely different. And I'm like, I don't know any of these names. I kind of recognize the bends and the angles and the shapes, but I am so completely lost on what's going on right now. And it was such an unfortunate thing, because as a new graduate, I spent a lot of time staring at the tips of instruments trying to figure it out.
Yes. And that happens too, where you just never know, right? Because the clinicians that you're working with, maybe you're not the only practicing hygienist at that location. They've got their favorites, and they've got the kit set up the way they want them. Or maybe you're the only clinician and you're provided the instruments that have been there from the previous clinicians. Maybe you are or aren't given an opportunity to be like, these are the ones I want. Can I get new instruments as a new clinician? And that's something that we need to do a better job as hygienists when we start a new employer, is trying to negotiate, how often can I get instruments? How often are the instruments replaced? Is there a limit? We got to have those conversations from the very, very front end, so we can maybe get some of our favorites, but still try some new things that are out there.
While we're on that point though, can we talk about how often we should be replacing instruments? Because I feel like that's a whole spectrum that you hear on the social media forums.
Oh man, it is. And I can't give you like you have to do it every 6 months, every 1 year, every year and a half, every 18 months, because there are so many factors. How many setups do you have? Do you have your instruments in cassettes? Do you have perio versus prophy versus perio maintenance? Do you have those kind of one-offs that are sterilized separate that you only pick up when you need it? How many patients per day are you seeing? Are you reusing, let's say, for example, I see 10 patients a day, but I only have 5 setups, and what I need for perio and prophy are in the same setup. Well, now I'm using that twice a day. Those instruments are going to wear down faster. I don't care what material they're made of. They're going to wear down faster. Also, if you're in a perio practice and you're doing a lot more scaling of hard, tenacious calculus, even with using our ultrasonics, it's a different texture, right, that you're scaling versus a soft, pillowy calculus or even biofilm. So there's a lot of factors there, but general answer is typically a year, year and a half, sometimes 18 months, depending on how many setups you have, the type of patients that you're treating, and just the general frequency of use. But it's not 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. Like when I first started dental hygiene, and I absolutely adore the dentist that gave me my very first practice, my job as a dental hygienist. I adore him to this day. The hygiene instruments that I was given to treat my patients were his when he was in dental school. Hello, I wasn't even born then, friend, okay? And they had little tiny, small metal handles.
Yeah.
And there were like hieroglyphics on the handle. It wasn't even like the instrument name. It was like a square and a circle and a triangle. And I was like, what is this supposed to be? There was probably an instrument name at some point.
Honestly, I think I know exactly what instrument that is. I think I've seen it.
Friend. They were so old though, right? And then of course the clinicians prior to me, they had sharpened them. The curettes were scalers and the scalers were curettes. And it was just like, I might as well sterilize some tweezers or a butter knife and see what happens, because that's kind of what I was given to work with. But also me being a new clinician, I didn't negotiate when I got hired to be like, you know what, can I look at the instruments that you have before I make this decision and then negotiate or ask, can you buy new instruments for me because this is not going to work? I was so new and just excited to have a job and was just dumbfounded when I was provided those. So thankfully, I had my instruments from hygiene school, which of course at that point were already 2 years old, but I wasn't using them every day, multiple times a day as a student. And then several of my classmates wanted to sell their instruments. So I purchased them just so I could have additional instruments to use that were newer-ish than the ones I was given. So you never know what you're going to be asked to work with. So we could have a whole nother conversation about like investing in yourself, right? Because if it's not being provided to you, only you can protect your hands. And those are your money makers when you're practicing clinically and really just everyday life. So it's worth investing in yourself also and seeing what else is out there.
Let me ask you this. So in your experience from what you've seen, what you've heard throughout kind of the industry, do hygienists usually have a prophy setup and a perio setup separately? Or is it more of the opposite where it's all combined? And then follow up to that is, you mentioned about having, if you don't have a cassette, then it's going to wear down faster. What are the rates on that? Is it, are we seeing about half the people have cassettes? Or, I feel like coming right out of school, and this wasn't that long ago, this was, 15 years ago, no one was using cassettes. And we were sticking our hands in there and sorting. So gross what we used to do. And then now it's like, I feel like predominantly, at least I've worked in DSO settings, we all had cassettes. So what are you seeing out there?
I think what I see the most now, and even when I temp or practice, and also just having conversations with hygienists from, across the United States who are at these conferences, most clinicians that I've had a chance to speak to have a prophy versus a perio set. Mm-hmm. So that's nice to see. Of course, depending on the practice, they may have everything still bundled together. But I like the idea of something separate, right? Because then you're not over sterilizing an instrument that didn't even get touched or used during that procedure. It's not getting processed over and over again. And you never, like I said, you never touched it. So, and then from a cassette perspective, I've tried to Google and Bing or search engine, whatever your favorite search engine is. If you try to search, what's the percentage of dental practices that use cassettes, it's really hard to get a defined number.
Okay.
So we really need to partner with probably our distribution partners and say, how many cassettes do you sell? So we may know how many we manufacture and sell, but that's not a comprehensive list of everyone who makes and manufactures cassettes. So if we just pretend and throw a rough number out there, it's probably 15, 20%. I mean, that would take quite a bit of time to try to validate, but it's not as many as we should. Like, we should use cassettes.
Lower than I would have probably.
Yeah.
You know, might be kind of interesting is to maybe run some polls and stuff on social media.
Yeah.
Where that, because the other thing too is like, if you're, that's probably a skewed sample though, because if you're in a dental hygiene social media forum, you're probably loving the profession a lot and are more engaged and probably a little bit more willing to follow the recommendations and things like that.
Yes. It would definitely require quite a bit of work, right? We have to talk to our manufacturing partners. What are their sales, per year? Our distribution partners, because what do they have on hand versus what are they ordering? And we've got a lot of different potential partners to converse with about that. So that's a very, very rough estimate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listeners, if you're out there and you guys don't have cassettes, I actually do want to hear about it. Andrew at Tele2Hygienist, just shoot me an email and be like, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. And also I want to know why, because I think it's a really interesting. Is it really just because, the practice owner doesn't want to invest in it? Is it you don't care for it as much? And if there's a legitimate reason for it, because there are legitimate reasons. Like I remember when one practice, our autoclave was a teeny tiny little thing. We couldn't get a cassette in there for a decent sized cassette. We could only basically have exam kits and things like that. So we had to put them all on trays and then load them in individually.
I would guess that's probably going to be outside of financial investment, which cassettes last a very long time as long as you're good to them, right? Outside of the financial investment, that's probably going to be the biggest feedback that you get is the size of the autoclave or a limitation of how much can be autoclaved when using cassettes. But there's so many benefits to it, with organization and proper flow in the ultrasonic solution and proper airflow and steam and everything. When you're autoclaving, there's a lot of benefits to having a tray that organizes or a cassette that organizes the instruments that we use.
I want to shift kind of quickly into this notion, and I told you before, and I'm happy to say it in public. I am the worst when it comes to instrumentations and knowing the names and labels and numbers and all the things for instruments. And I think I do really think that most hygienists are like me. So I guess the question I have for you is more like, if we grew up on an instrument, how do we know what else is out there that's the equivalent? And what can you tell us about the process for learning that easily? I would say easily, but I know it's not an easy process, but how can we find out about competitors and stuff?
I would definitely go back to our original recommendation of if you see an instrumentation class available at a conference or your local component, or as you're exploring what it's available to you, I would take it. Because even if you've been practicing for 10, 20, 30 years and you're very seasoned in your clinical skill, maybe it's time to just try something different. So, for example, Andrew, what was your favorite universal curette?
I am a blue 4R4L. Well, the handle's blue, but it's 4R4L.
Okay. So, if you like a 4L, 4R, or R4L, I've heard it called both ways. So it has a nice long terminal shank, universal curette. So we've got a toe, we've got a cutting edge on both sides. But there's also a Barnhart 5.6, nice straight long terminal shank. There's also a Barnhart 1.2. There's also a Columbia 2L2R or a Columbia 1314. So you've got like a family of Columbias, you've got a family of Barnharts. But if you just really like the 4L4R, why did we never try the other things? Did we need a little bit longer shank? We just thought, well, I'll make it work. But you could have done a Columbia 2L2R and gotten a little bit longer shank. Or you could have said, okay, this is an adolescent patient. I really didn't need the length of the shank of a 4R, 4L, 4L, 4R. And you could have used a Columbia 1314 that has a shorter terminal shank, which is a very similar design to a 204S. It's just the toe version versus the tip version. So there's so many things that are designed very similar that come in a sickle, pointed tip versus a toe, rounded toe, but the shank designs are very similar. And multiple manufacturing partners have all of those, really, in addition to their proprietary instruments that only they manufacture.
Is there like an equivalency guide anywhere that's like, that'd be interesting if there was.
Not that I've seen, but don't have me start a new project, Andrew.
I'm not trying to put a project on you, but like if you do, let me know. I will put it in the show notes for this episode. But so I guess here's my thing. Let's just go back. Let's take it to the very basics of the things that I recognize. So in those ones that I have physically used in practice is Columbia 1314, 404R, 404L. So I guess you mentioned adolescents patients for the Columbia 1314. Is there a reason why I couldn't or shouldn't use those on adults or fully developed dentition?
You could absolutely use it on adults. If you're doing a healthy mouth prophy, you don't need those longer shank lengths when you have pockets that are 3 millimeters or less. So a Columbia 1314 is great for that. If you have a patient, though, that has gingivitis, they've got, gingival inflammation, maybe it's a perio maintenance patient, so they've got either active disease or you've arrested it, but they've got bone loss, you need those longer shanks. You need those rigid shanks. Sometimes when you're removing calculus and working in those subgingival pockets. So you can use a Columbia 1314 really on any patient that you don't need the longer shank because there's not bone loss or inflammation to give you that the depth that you need.
So I am a minimalist, I think, when it comes to instruments. Can you give me like your must-haves for like a prophy appointment?
Yeah.
Like, what would you have in your cassette?
Okay, so my must-haves for a prophy, I love a Montana jack as a posterior sickle. Of course, I also sneak and use it in the anterior, like a lot of clinicians do. We kind of use instruments wherever we want to use them. And as long as you know how to use them, that's okay, right?
Sure.
Because you're practicing safely and adapting it correctly. So I have to have a Montana jack. I'm a big fan of a Barnhart 5.6. So similar to your 4R, 4L that you like, I just like a Barnhart 5.6 because I like the shank design and how it's kind of that 90 degree to the upper shank and terminal shank. And really, if I add an anterior sickle to that, I like an H5 with a spoon, or I'm okay with an H6, H7, or a Jack B Nimble. Just depends on kind of what I like. But I've got to have some kind of straight shaped sickle, like a H5, and I really like a spoon, or an O'Hare, like a scoop type spoon for that anterior stain and that veneer calculus that just, takes a minute to get off there when you're using your hand instrument sometimes.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that you mentioned that, because I think that I was a late adopter of the spoon, and the spoon is glorious. If you have not used it before, it's one of those ones that you don't necessarily have to use on every patient, but like you think about the upper anterior, especially like 8 and 9, those deep fossas, and like you get those really, like you do your ultrasonic can't get there because of like the angulation and the curvature of those fossas that you can't. A straight instrument doesn't
just work. More challenging to adapt to. For sure.
I mean, you just need more, and if you don't have like an air polisher of sorts, like it's really impossible to do. So that saved my life. I mean, hundreds of patients, and so I'm glad that you brought that one up, because that's kind of a little bit different than I think what most of us do. I'm an age 6-7 person my own self, and I think pretty much everything in there I would also probably use. I don't know if I would. I might add a Gracie 1314, just because while generally on a healthy prophy patient you wouldn't probably necessarily need it, but I think that there's just a wrist angle that I like just to get further back there. That's all. It's more of a preference, not necessarily a need for that. So let's now add in, okay, now we have gingivitis kind of coming in. What instruments would we add to the mix for you?
So if a patient has gingivitis, I definitely go with the longer shanks. So I look for, I like a Barnhart 1-2. I might put my 4L4R in there instead of a Barnhart, but you're getting similar shank lengths when you're looking at those, except for like a 2L2R or a Barnhart 1-2 has a little bit longer shank than
Right.
the one that's probably known more commonly. And then I also really like, I do like a 204S, but we need a longer shank. So then I go to a 23 or I go to a Montana 4.5. So if you
What's
like
23?
Ooh, so it's a similar design to a Barnhart 5.6, except it's a sickle tip instead of a rounded toe. So it has a nice long shank, but has a pointed tip. So similar to a Montana 4.5, except you get a little bit different bends, but you need a little bit longer shank because I always used to teach my students, when two teeth touch, what is the shape in between? What's the shape of an interproximal papilla? It's a triangle.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you need those triangles, right? And a sickle is a triangle in cross section. So to get right under those contacts, it's more challenging to adapt a curette where having a sickle with a little bit longer shank, you don't have to go subgingivally with it, but you need it for those contacts and right around those CEJs. And that's where that Montana 4.5 comes in, or a 23, longer shank with a pointed tip for that interproximal.
I love it.
And then I have my Gracies, of course, but I like a 15-16. It's easier to use in a seated position. And I like a Gracie 13-14 for those distal. So I do have my Gracies for my patients with gingivitis and perio. And then I just either add extended shanks, so the longer shanks for my perio patients, or rigid. And then I really like a mini, like a Gracie 1-2 mini for my perio patients, because you just need to do some of that fine scaling sometimes. I like that miniature blade with that longer shank.
I'm trying to think of like any other like outlying, maybe like dental anomalies or any other like special circumstances where you're like, you know what, this is a really good instrument for a special circumstance.
I've got those too. I told you, a box of crayons over here, Andrew.
Of course you do.
If my patient has exposed furcations, which is not always the case, right? I mean, as we get into deep, higher stages of bone loss for our patients are going to have furcation exposure. I really like the Queen of Hearts. It's a really large open curve in the shank, and it has a 6 millimeter long cutting edge on both sides of the blade. So as you kind of insert like a probe, so straight down, and then you're making your horizontal and oblique strokes as you work across the root surface, like into the furcation. And then because the cutting edge is so long, you can easily kind of turn and adapt into the furca. It depends on, if you're doing a maxillary versus mandibular, how many furcations do you have? Is it class 1, class 2, class 3 furcation? I also like the O'Hare scoops. Not a lot of people, I guess, use those if they're not familiar with a spoon. It has a deeper concavity to it, and it has a 270-degree cutting edge, so it's really rounded, and it really adapts to furcations nicely too, and those curves and contours of those fossa. So I like a Queen because it's got a really, really long cutting edge. A 6 millimeter long cutting edge is longer than what most instruments have.
Are you into files at all? Are you a filer?
I'm going to say no. I'm not a huge filer. I would probably use my O'Hare scoop for that, because you could use a push or pull stroke to break that up. And then I go into my ultrasonic.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Which I things we grew up on. I grew up on files. I was like, that's the only thing I knew. I'm like, okay, this is how we're going to do that.
Yes.
All right. We have just a few more minutes remaining. I want to talk a little bit more just about handle design, and I think things to look for and why we need to look for specific items in handle design.
That's a good question. So when you have a lightweight instrument, you have the ability to increase your tactile sensitivity. You also want like a nice aggressive pattern. It's also called knurling, kind of a fun little Knurling. It's like a fun one to say, and then how the world you spell it. So you want like a nice pattern on the handle because that helps improve your tactile sensitivity. But when you have a good sharp blade and you've got a nice light grasp, you can feel what you're scaling and you can feel what you're really exploring that you need to scale and remove. So when you have a nice light handle, you can reduce your pinch force, especially with a sharper blade, to pinch and pop and do that short, sharp bite. You can reduce the actual pressure that you put when you pinch, which then helps ergonomically for your hand and your wrist, and it reduces that hand and wrist fatigue. So the lighter weight handle helps reduce that fatigue that you could get, but also having a good sharp blade, increased patient comfort, also decreased fatigue for the clinician.
I love it. Look, listeners, I hope you got a lot out of this. I think what I would really love is if you have very specific questions for Whitney, is just to shoot her a message, because we didn't cover a lot of the things. There's a lot of terms, words, 204S, like there's just things that people are not familiar with. If you want clarifications or if you want an equivalent to what you currently have, please let her know. Whitney, how can they contact you, or how can they find you on social media?
Oh, absolutely. Hunt me down. I have an Instagram. It's Whitney H_PDT on Instagram. Or you can also email me. It's Whitney_Howerton. So let's spell that. That gets a little fun. So it's WHITNEY_Howerton, HOWERTON @pdtdental.com.
And I'll make sure I put those in the show notes for everyone. So you can just click on that and click through. Whitney, thanks for being here. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Andrew. This was fantastic. We just have to figure out our next topic.
Topics. Okay. All right. Thanks, Whitney.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.